Hello, I'm Neil Bradley, Executive Vice President and Chief Policy Officer at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I hope you're enjoying the program today as much as I am. We have a special treat for you in our next segment. We're going to be joined by the Director of the Small Business Administration, the Honorable Isabella Guzman. As a reminder, our audience can ask questions, including as part of this segment. So simply go to the chat feature on the display and enter in your questions. After we hear from the administrator and we engage in a quick conversation, we're going to get to your questions. The administrator is no stranger to small business. She's an entrepreneur herself. Before joining the SBA and taking the lead of the agency, she ran the Office of the Small Business Advocate for the state of California, home to some 4 million small businesses. And before that, she served in the Obama administration as a senior advisor and deputy chief of staff at the SBA. There's perhaps no agency that has more on their plate at the start of 2021 than the Small Business Administration. We've relied on them to help millions of small businesses navigate a pandemic and come back on the other side, including many minority entrepreneurs. So, Administrator Guzman, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. I'm really pleased to join the Chamber today for this important Equality of Opportunity Summit. I think that says it all. I truly value the Chamber's partnership as we work toward racial equity to truly finally lift up our underserved small business owners, which will really help rebuild our economy. As the voice for America's 30 million small businesses and innovative startups, I am committed to ensuring the SBA can bridge the gaps to support all of our nation's small businesses in accessing capital, markets, and networks so that they can launch and grow and be resilient and build those jobs that they're so great at doing. We're really working hard right now to build bridges to those who have historically been left behind, especially people of color and women entrepreneurs who are starting small businesses at the highest rates, but often face those capital gaps, opportunity gaps that limit their growth. And our economy really depends on our ability to close those gaps and tap into that entrepreneurial spirit, which is what I'm so excited about as being the SBA administrator. To reach every entrepreneur who needs our help, especially our underserved entrepreneurs, the SBA under my leadership is putting the customer first to understand who they are, the changing face of entrepreneurship, what their challenges are, the opportunities that they have in front of them, as well as what they need from the SBA to survive and thrive into the future. We're also being very technology forward in our design, leveraging technology, streamlining, automating for speed and efficiency and to meet our new scale, and take advantage as well of the fact that so many small businesses have adopted technology at high rates during COVID. Ultimately, it's about being as entrepreneurial as the entrepreneurs we serve and meeting the small businesses where they are today. You know, President Biden's American Rescue Plan provided critical relief to our small businesses through the expansion of PPP, shuttered venues, and aisle advances, as well as through the new program, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. The SBA has scaled dramatically to meet these programs and demand now from a $40 billion portfolio to more than $1 trillion in relief, dispersing loans, grants, debt relief, and other resources to help our nation's small businesses weather this storm. And we have throughout focused on equity, ensuring that the underserved, people of color, women, veterans, rural, and low-income communities could also access these programs more easily, unlike previous relief. And now, as we begin to transition to the recovery phase of this crisis and seeing small businesses recover and main streets reopen and manufacturing and others positioning for growth, we're looking at ways that we can help all of our small businesses thrive again. And President Biden's proposed American Jobs Plan will give many of our nation's small businesses a chance to be part of the rebuilding and reimagining of our economy. Through the American Jobs Plan, as well as the American Family Plan, President Biden has laid out plans to take on major challenges to fortify our foundation, which I know will strengthen our small businesses. And that's strengthening our industrial and innovation base to ensure that the future is made in America, and really repositioning America's leadership as the net exporter of major technologies again. Investing in sustainable infrastructure and laying the foundation for a clean energy future, investing in our caring economy to ease the burden of care on working families, and finally, of course, advancing racial equity to ensure that Americans in every community see the benefits of a revitalized economy and renewed U.S. global competitiveness. We know that the nation's small businesses are key drivers of our nation's economy, which means that if we're going to bring back our economy, we have to bring back all of our small businesses equitably. So I look forward to this conversation, the focus of the summit, and seeing how we can talk about entrepreneurship and support of our diverse entrepreneurs across the nation. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you, Administrator. I want to dive in on a couple of the topics that you mentioned. I want to start with some of what we learned during the pandemic. I think the pandemic highlighted problems that we knew existed for minority entrepreneurs and underserved communities, particularly with respect to access to capital and the ability to access support services. We knew it was there, but it was really became heightened as we were trying to respond to the pandemic. And the government has kind of had an iterative response, if you think about the last 16 months, with the PPP program, now with restaurant revitalization. When you look back, what do you think the lessons learned are that we can carry forward into a post-pandemic world about how we make sure that minority entrepreneurs and underserved communities really do have equitable access to the support and the capital that they need to be able to thrive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that persistent barriers to capital markets and networks exist. We're aware of them, across the board, especially for women and people of color, but throughout our underserved communities. And they were hit harder by the impacts of the pandemic, and that's what we need to correct for. So we do have to work harder to build that awareness. I mean, I do think that the silver lining was that there's an increased attention and awareness of small business issues and the SBA, which used to be like known as the best kept secret of government, federal government, which is not where we want to be, especially with 30 million small businesses and births and deaths happening so quickly. So I really believe that one of the key deficits was recognizing that people couldn't connect to resources, and especially underserved businesses. And so I really appreciate the President Biden's focus and commitment. One of the first things he talked to me about was the American Rescue Plan and the Community Navigator pilot program that was going to be launched within it. But we're looking across our programs. How do we reposition and make sure our resource partners, our field offices are equipped, as well as the future navigators, to share those resources with the communities? They have to be authentic local voices as well, so that we can build back trust, because I think there's also that, folks who are concerned with, working with the government based on past experiences. And so we need to overcome those barriers and then just be transformative about all of our programs to meet businesses, as I say, where they are. That's why I'm challenging my team to think entrepreneurially, because we have to understand where they're at to really serve them with the products and services that they need.
In logistics, we talk about the last mile of delivery, right? That the last mile is always the hardest. And, I feel like that may be a comparison there to helping underserved communities, right? Getting into those communities. And you talked a little bit about the Community Navigators program. But today in our audience, we have hundreds of local community organizations, business associations, chambers of commerce, as well as large employers with footprints all over the United States. Do you have some advice for the audience today about how we help complete that last mile of delivery, both for public programs like the ones the SBA runs, but also in expanding minority supplier networks on the private sector? Are there some best practices that you would recommend, or things you would point us to?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I know SBA is probably one of its biggest strengths is its ability to connect with public-private partnerships. I mean, our 7A loan program or 504, those are all built on the financial sector and our ability to reach small businesses through these partners. So we recognize how critical that is. In California, I worked extensively with a lot of technology providers to launch e-commerce initiatives during COVID to help businesses adapt. And I think we need to continue to build on those relationships, leveraging whatever the federal resources are to help our private partners better serve small businesses and reach them. I do think that building that trust and making those connections and understanding where businesses are is so key. It's also why I just recently relaunched the Council on Underserved Communities, which I had previously helped start up with Maria Contreras-Sweet, the former administrator. We had relaunched it during that time, during Obama, and then previously Deputy Administrator Marie Johns had chaired it right before. So we, I think that that's important to really bring people into our programs and understand what we're offering, and then we can hear from them what the issues are. And so I would just say broadly that we need to increase our communication and our connections in order to better serve these small businesses and leverage wherever authentic and trusted relationships exist so that we can better serve businesses.
We're committed to that type of dialogue and communication, as I know the local and state chambers who are here today are, as are our partners in this Equality of Opportunity Initiative. And we're counting partners in every state, all of whom are trying to figure out how we take the knowledge that we've learned over the last year and really convert it into action. I want to shift gears for a second. And I think one of our audience members may be reading the same news stories that I was reading this morning that you and I were talking about in the green room a minute ago. And that is the wonderfully good news out of the past year about new business starts, and particularly small businesses that were launched that are most likely to become small business employers. So not just sole proprietorships, but really, engines of job creation themselves. The SBA, Chambers of Commerce, locals, we know that as businesses' first few years are really the toughest. So how is it that we can help all of these new small businesses that have been started, but also in particular those founded by minorities or in underserved communities? How can we make sure that they're around 2, 3, 5 years from now? Are there some best practices that we should be thinking about? How are you focusing on this at the SBA?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I do define things as like I want to give them the funding to help them start, the capital, and then the access to markets. I think the revenue side of the equation is equally important. I think we talked briefly before in the green room about supply chain issues. And so I do believe what SBA is positioning to do is just to look transformatively across our programs to see how we might need to make some adjustments to meet business owners where they are today. I mean, obviously they've taken on more debt. They've changed operationally. How can we better support them into the future? And so we're talking with partners extensively and learning what industry impacts there are and what businesses think they need to rebuild over the next 6 months and beyond. And so even when it comes to capital, I'm trying to put everything on the table. And of course, we're focused on the relief right now. But as we look at our core programs, how can we drive economic growth with more funds? And so, especially for the underserved, so we're looking at direct lending by the SBA to the smallest businesses to see how we can fill any gaps that exist currently in the marketplace. Our SBIC program, the small business investment companies that we fund. We have about 300, and that's more than $19 billion in private capital and $14.8 billion in leverage and commitments from the SBA. We're looking at how we can license more diverse managers who we know invest in diverse businesses, and also incentivize our SBIC portfolio across the board to support underserved businesses and help them grow across the country. So we're really excited about all those opportunities, as well as some of those proposals in the American Jobs Plan, which include a new venture SBIC. And when we talk about starts, like that's where it's at. That's where there's these capital gaps. We want to drive more early stage equity investments into businesses owned by diverse owners across the board, as well as low income, rural areas, manufacturing, infrastructure. And I know that it's not just about loans, but also as we spur innovation. We know that heavy job creation is within those science and technology-based firms that have high growth rates. We have this Small Business Innovation Research Fund, which is America's Seed Fund, and it's providing that early stage public finance for those great ideas and moving them from the lab to the marketplace. So I think we need to get creative across our capital programs. And then on the market access, we definitely need to make sure that we're supporting on the contracting and e-commerce and other market solutions to drive our businesses. And President Biden announced his commitment to triple that small disadvantaged business goal, and by 2025, which is $100 billion over 5 years. So we're really looking forward to that future.
Well, there are clearly a lot of investments being made. There's a lot of gaps to close. Our audience today started off the program hearing about our data dashboard and some of the ways that we're trying to measure the inequality of opportunity, because we know that when we measure things that we can judge our success and our progress that we're making. I know you're committed to doing the same thing with the programs that you've talked about today. And I just want to express my appreciation on behalf of the U.S. Chamber for your leadership and the work that you're doing, not only to help minority entrepreneurs, but small businesses all across this country.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much.